This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
The Italian ambassador to DR Congo dies after a WFP convoy is attacked. WHO chief calls for equitable distribution of vaccines. And the World Health Organization urges Tanzania to start reporting COVID-19 cases. Hello and a very warm welcome to you wherever you're joining us. This is Africa Live on CGTN. I'm Mahia Mutua in Nairobi. Also coming up, in business, Tanzania to increase 2021-2022 fiscal year spending by 4%. And in sports, meet the young Senegalese champion jockey Fallou Diop, who's eyeing international success. Welcome to the bulletin. We start in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where Italy's ambassador to the country was killed in an ambush. Luca Attanasio was taking part in a WFP school feeding program. Gunmen attacked the convoy in eastern DRC, killing 2 other passengers. CGTN's Astatal has more.
It's a sad day at the Italian embassy in the DRC. Just a day earlier, Ambassador Luca Attanasio was taking part in a food program organized by the UN's World Food Program. An attempted kidnapping led to the death of the 43-year-old ambassador. This comes as a shock to those who knew him.
Personally, I know the ambassador very well and I'm very sad. I'm very sad. I just do not understand how a young man, intelligent ambassador who went to Goma to save the lives of Congolese must die in such conditions. I ask myself the question, how far will we go in this situation?
Gunmen ambushed the UN convoy near the eastern city of Goma, the capital of North Kivu province. The province's governor says they fired warning shots to stop the car. The driver was killed while the rest of the convoy was led to a nearby forest. A Congolese army unit came to their rescue, but the assailants killed Attanasio and his bodyguard as they exchanged fire. The DRC's Foreign Affairs Minister joined others in sending her condolences.
Truly, it is with sorrow and a lot of sadness that we have just learned of the death of the young Italian ambassador here in the Democratic Republic of Congo in a WFP convoy, and that this convoy fell into an ambush, and that not only his driver was killed, but also himself. We are also aggravated because just a week ago, he was here in this office to invite us to participate in the G20 in Italy next summer.
The 7-member convoy was not escorted by any security forces, despite the road being a frequent site for bandit attacks. The WFP states the road had been cleared for travel without security escorts. The agency is currently seeking information from local authorities.
The Secretary General calls on the government of the Democratic Republic of the Congo to investigate swiftly this heinous targeting of a UN joint field mission and to bring the perpetrators to justice. He reaffirms that the United Nations will continue to support the Congolese government and the people in their efforts to bring about peace and stability, especially in the east of the country.
Authorities are still searching for the assailants in the country's Virunga National Park. No group has claimed responsibility for the attack. Astatal, CGTN.
Well, let's get more on that story now. CGTN's Chris Ochamringa joins us from Kinshasa and joins us live for more on this story. Chris, what is the latest you can tell us on the killings of the Italian ambassador in eastern DRC?
Well, Maria, the DRC President Felix Tshisekedi yesterday held a meeting with senior security officials here in Kinshasa, and they decided that they'll send a team to the area where this incident happened, a place known as Kibumba, to investigate the the killing of Ambassador Luca Tanasio, his bodyguard, and the Congolese driver. And the team that is going there said that they will leave no stone unturned until they find the killers of the ambassador and the people who were killed along with him. We've also been made to understand that that road where this incident happened had been cleared earlier by security officials for travel without any escorts, and so it's quite startling that this happened. We spoke to some security officials from the UN, and they said that there are quite a number of rebel groups that operate in that area. Many of them carry out guerrilla tactics. They hide in the community, and so it's very difficult to find them because they don't want to, harm civilians who are not linked to any rebel group. And so it's still very difficult, a big challenge for them to weed out the rebels in that area. Mahia?
And Chris, how is the government dealing with this attack, and do we know at this time who could have been behind it?
Well, there has been an outpouring of condolence messages from the DRC government, right from the president's office, ministers, senators, legislators, and ordinary Congolese. And they're all saying one thing. In French, it's known as trop c'est trop, which means enough is enough. They are fed up of the killings in the east of the DRC, particularly North Kivu, that has more than 100 rebel groups operating there. And they're saying the government must do everything possible now to stop the killings. People there are optimistic that now the government will step up operations, because ever since October 2019, the government launched a large-scale military operation in that area to remove all the rebel groups there, but the killings have continued to happen, especially in a territory known as Beni in the east of the DRC. And we have also learned from the Congolese Minister for the Interior that he was accusing a Rwandan group known as the Democratic Forces for the Liberation of Rwanda, it's the FDLR, of being behind this attack. It's still very early. I mean, many people were startled that he came up with this conclusion. They don't know how he zeroed in on them, because there are very many rebel groups there. But we've also seen a statement from a member of the FDLR. It was signed, and they were denying any connection, any involvement in the killing of Ambassador Luca Tanasio. This group is originally from Rwanda. They are composed of Hutu fighters who fled Rwanda in 1994 and settled in eastern DRC. Their plan has been to reorganize and attack and remove the government of President Kagame in Rwanda. And so they have been operating in eastern DRC for a very long time. Earlier this year, there was an attack in Virunga National Park where 6 rangers were killed, and the local authorities there blamed that attack on the FDLR. And so that is one reason that people believe could link them to this attack, but they have denied it. So it's still early days. We're waiting for investigations, thorough investigations from authorities. The UN is also supporting the DRC government to find the killers. And what is certain about this is that the security situation is going to change, because there has been a lot of commitment from leaders in the DRC and their partners who are helping them to secure this country. Mahia?
All right, Chris, thank you very much for your insights there. CGTN's Chris Ochamringa joining us live from Kinshasa. Well, let's get more insights into this story. For more on this, we're joined by Nelleke van der Waal, who is the Deputy Project Director for Central Africa at the International Crisis Group, also joining us from Kinshasa. Nelleke, what does this incident mean in terms of security in Eastern DRC?
Hi, good afternoon. I think what you see is that the death of the ambassador, his bodyguard, and also his driver, it shines a light on the ongoing violence in the Democratic Republic of Congo, especially in the eastern part that has been plagued by armed group attacks for years. The convoy was on its way from Goma to Rutshuru, and this is a region where armed groups are very active. There are often kidnappings. You see also that young people sometimes stop vehicles to get money from the drivers. Congolese are often targeted as well. I think it basically shows that in Eastern DRC, there is ongoing violence by armed groups. A recent report by the UN showed that the number of human rights violations committed by armed groups in the East increased in 2020, especially in North Kivu, where the incident took place, and in the Ituri province, also in the east of the country. And yesterday, another report came out that showed that about 122 armed groups are active in the east. So it basically shines a light on what has been ongoing for years.
And speaking of the region, how is, if any, this security situation there going to be resolved?
Yeah, that's a difficult question. As I just pointed out, it's not new. Violence has been ongoing for 20, 25 years. I think it's very important for the Congolese President Felix Tshisekedi to start focusing on the East. He has said that it is one of his priorities, but he has been extremely distracted by Kinshasa politics and how to deal with his predecessor, Joseph Kabila. He should formulate a policy on the East. You rightly pointed out to the role of the region. I think it's very relevant that neighboring countries of the DRC, especially Uganda, Rwanda, and Burundi, who all have ties to armed groups active in the East, that they are involved in a discussion about how to resolve the ongoing violence in the area. And then I think there are two other important elements, and that is offer something to the armed groups as an alternative. So make sure that they demobilize and that it is better to do something else than to be active for an armed group, and reach out to local communities. Make sure that you are in touch with local leaders instead, because a lot of the armed groups are embedded in local communities. So you need to get in touch with them instead of focusing on just a military approach. Make sure that you are in touch with those on the ground.
All right, Nelika, thank you very much for joining us. Deputy Project Director for Central Africa at the International Crisis Group, Nelika van der Waal, speaking to us live there from Kinshasa. Moving on, global promises of equitable distribution of coronavirus vaccines are yet to be realized, as an initiative aimed at helping achieve that goal is yet to distribute even a single dose to countries that sought assistance. The World Health Organization's Regional Office for Africa says COVAX now plans to start the rollout of vaccines at the end of February. CGTN's Daniel Arap Moi reports.
COVAX was intended to curb vaccine nationalism and support countries in need of inoculations, but it has since struggled to get off the ground. African countries which are most in need of support from the COVAX facility are yet to receive even a single dose.
I know right from the beginning, we've been saying that COVAX has not delivered these, and countries that have gone ahead and taken the vaccine. The truth is that, yes, richer countries went out and procured huge doses of vaccine that we did not expect, but the COVAX facility will still deliver on its mandate.
The World Health Organization Regional Office for Africa now says a rapid vaccines rollout will start between the end of February and the beginning of March. But in a key step forward for the African region, vaccination plans for COVID-19 vaccines from 35 low-income African countries eligible for free vaccines from the COVAX facility have been accepted by an independent regional review committee.
We are having the first 20%, the vaccines covering 20% of the population for the poorer countries, the low-income countries, fully subsidized, as in fully funded by the COVAX facility.
The vaccine preparation plans are expected to help ensure African countries hit the ground running in quickly immunizing the most vulnerable people. The move to roll out COVID-19 vaccines comes as new evidence shows new variants of the virus are spreading across the continent. According to the WHO, in all the African countries that have detected the new variants, the pandemic spread faster in the second wave than in the first one. Variant 501Y V2, also known as B1351, first identified in South Africa, has now been detected in 9 African countries. WHO says it will continue to help African countries improve sequencing capabilities to quickly detect any new variants. Daniel Arap Moi, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.
Well, to bring us more on that report, Daniel Arap Moi joins us live now from our newsroom here in Nairobi. Daniel, as we heard from your report there, global promises of equitable distribution of coronavirus vaccines are at this time yet to be realized. How is Africa affected?
Well, thank you very much. Indeed, Africa, as we all know, up until now, is that over 100,000 Africans across the continent have succumbed to COVID-19 virus. Now, the country is affected in two major ways, if I may try to analyze here. Now, Africa as a continent was a little bit slow when it comes to securing COVID-19 vaccines. We very well know, as reported earlier, that a majority of the rich countries went out in the very first place to secure huge doses of COVID-19 vaccines. And that left Africa as a continent, struggling to secure these vaccines. Now, up until now, Africa is still in the midst of that particular struggle. Which vaccines do we go for? Where can we get enough vaccines to vaccinate our people? Because of what we saw happening among rich nations that went out to secure just so much for their population, forgetting that the entire world needs these vaccines. So that is one of the ways that Africa has been greatly affected when it comes to procuring vaccines enough to help its population come out of the COVID-19 struggles. Now, secondly, the question of the pricing of these vaccines. Africa, as you know, even before the start of this particular virus, African countries' healthcare systems were already struggling to cope with various diseases across the continent. Now, with the coming on board of the COVID-19 virus, it even added on to the struggles that Africa was already facing. So the question of prices for these vaccines, it's something that African governments are still struggling with. Some are very expensive for African governments to afford for their population. So that is one key area that maybe African governments will have to look into. But of course, through other initiatives, we are seeing these slowly being worked upon. But those two areas are majorly the areas where Africa as a continent has been affected. The area of rich countries holding the vaccine for themselves, and also the pricing of the various vaccines that we have at play right now.
And Daniel, the World Health Organization says that COVAX is planning to start the rollout of the vaccines at the end of February. First of all, how important is COVAX to Africa? And secondly, how is the WHO then planning to roll out these vaccines?
Well, just as we heard from my package earlier on, the World Health Organization is working together with other partners, with governments across Africa and vaccine manufacturers to ensure that the African continent, first of all, secures around 20% of vaccines that will be enough to vaccinate around 20% of the African population. So that is what Africa is doing right now through the World Health Organization to secure at least vaccines that can be able to help 20% of the African population. But of course, their target is over 600,000 vaccines for the African continent. So that is what the continent is trying to do together with the World Health Organization. But of course, it is the African Union that is leading the way. Now, you ask a very pertinent question here that how important is COVAX? Now, COVAX is a very important initiative that was instituted by the African Union. Now, having looked back at the way countries are trying to hoard vaccines from Africa as a continent, the African Union, together with other partners, came up together to ensure to find a way of how can Africa, poor as it may be, access enough vaccine to help vaccinate its population. So COVAX was this initiative brought about to help access COVID vaccines, but from a very point that it should be affordable to African countries. So the African Union, through other partners, came together to ensure that we can access COVID-19 vaccines, but at a cheaper price. So they have so far, of course, acquired around 270 million doses of COVAX to ensure that this will be distributed to African countries. Now, African countries who have registered to be part of the COVAX facility will be able to access this vaccine free of charge, as mentioned by the WHO Africa region, that it will be subsidized, but they're saying it will be actually virtually free for those African member countries under the COVAX facility. So it is an important initiative that will help poorer countries, given that some richer countries are holding these vaccines for themselves and their people. Africa will have to rely on COVAX to ensure that its population can access these vaccines.
All right, Daniel, thank you very much for that. Daniel Arap Moy joining us from our newsroom here in Nairobi. Moving on, the World Health Organization Director General Tedros Ghebreyesus has called for an equitable and fair distribution of vaccines across the world. During his address from Geneva, Dr. Tedros also criticized high-income countries for not doing enough to support the COVAX initiative that aims to provide vaccines to poorer countries. CGTN's Wanja Mungai has the story.
Addressing the media in Geneva, Switzerland, the WHO chief Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus appealed for more funding to support COVID-19 testing, treatment, as well as vaccinations across the world.
The G7 countries have shown leadership, but we need all countries to step up. We still face a gap of at least $22.9 billion to fully finance the ACT Accelerator this year. It's important to note, however, that money is not the only challenge we face. If there are no vaccines to buy, money is irrelevant.
In early February, the COVAX coalition had promised to allocate 90 million doses to African countries. The first phase will focus on healthcare workers and the most vulnerable, including the elderly. But according to the WHO Director General, countries need to do more to ensure the neediest countries also get the vaccines.
Currently, some high-income countries are entering contracts with vaccine manufacturers that undermine the deals that COVAX has in place and reduce the number of doses COVAX can buy. Even if we have the funds, we can only deliver vaccines to poorer countries if high-income countries cooperate in respecting the deals COVAX has done and the new deals it's doing.
Currently, only 6 African countries have rolled out independent inoculation programs. They include Morocco, Algeria, Egypt, South Africa, Seychelles, Rwanda, Mauritius, and Zimbabwe.
This is not a matter of charity. It's a matter of epidemiology. Unless we end the pandemic everywhere, we will not end it anywhere.
So far, the African continent has recorded 3.8 million cases of coronavirus, more than 100,000 deaths, and close to 3.5 million recoveries. Wanja Mungai, CGTN.
Well, the WHO Director General has also urged Tanzania to start reporting COVID-19 cases. The WHO has also asked Tanzania to scale up public health measures against the virus and be part of the global vaccination program. CGTN's Daniel Kijo has more details.
It's been 9 months since Tanzania last reported COVID-19 data. In May last year, the country had registered 509 cases and 21 fatalities. The WHO wants that to change. The extent of the spread of the coronavirus in Tanzania is unknown, but the WHO says some Tanzanians traveling outside their countries have tested positive. President John Magufuli's government has chosen to handle the virus differently to other countries. It did not implement a lockdown like its neighbors Kenya and Uganda. It instead focused on urging people to wash and sanitize their hands, steam themselves with herbal blends, and eat immune-boosting foods. The president is even encouraging citizens to buy locally made masks, claiming some of the imported masks were compromised.
I am your leader. I know a lot and have to tell you the truth. If you will wear a mask, please, those made by the health ministry, or make your own.
The government has now released 8 steps to combat the virus. They include eating balanced diets, following instructions from health experts, putting on face masks, and reporting to health centers after developing symptoms. Tanzanians are also encouraged to try traditional remedies which have not been proven to work.
For sure, they have been healed by our medications, and those 10 that came to thank us show that more are healed but have not given us feedback. Let's not fear corona. The medication is available. We shouldn't stop steaming ourselves, drinking lemon and ginger tea. These are things that even our elders used to use.
With data scarce, glimpses into the scale of the problem come from individual cases. Zanzibar's vice president and the chairman of a political party, Maalim Seif, died after spending time in hospital for COVID-19 treatment.
Tanzania's lack of COVID-19 data has been controversial both here and internationally. The WHO and other bodies argue that data would help illustrate the extent of infections, while the government feels that would create unnecessary panic. Instead, it is choosing to focus on promoting its preventative campaigns and alternative herbal remedies.
The unusual approach has affected public opinion on the pandemic.
You see, I'm not wearing a mask. It's because we don't know the data. We don't know who died and who got infected. So we view it as just a passing phase.
This disease is everywhere, and we are not an island, so I support how the government chose to handle it. I don't think the government wants to deliberately hurt its people.
As it stands, Tanzania is choosing not to import vaccines. The government says it will only buy medication that has been tested. But global health authorities warn that without a vaccine program, the country would become a hotspot for the virus. Daniel Kijo, CGTN, Dar es Salaam.
You're watching Africa Live here on CGTN. Stay with us as we take a short break. Here's what's coming up. The UN wants Somalia's delayed elections to be held as soon as possible. And Guinea set to launch Ebola vaccination drive.
Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climates and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
I've been Tunis, Cairo, Juba, Johannesburg, Ethiopia,
Tanzania.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. Now, the head of the United Nations Assistance Mission in Somalia, James Swan, has warned of growing political tension in Somalia. Addressing the United Nations Security Council from New York, Swan warned that the current political standoff in the Horn of Africa nation is hindering progress and affecting security. The Somali federal government and federal member states had reached an agreement to hold the polls. The pact stated that the parliamentary elections would be held between the 1st and the 27th of December last year, while the presidential polls were scheduled for February the 8th this year, but that did not happen.
Growing political tensions threaten Somalia's state-building progress and even security, unless they are resolved through dialogue and compromise in the interest of the country. Unfortunately, instead we are seeing increased brinkmanship, pressure tactics, and tests of strength that can only heighten risks. The political standoff among key Somali leaders has blocked implementation of the electoral model agreed by the federal government of Somalia president and federal member state leaders on 17 September 2020. I remain convinced that the consensus-based 17 September model offers the best available option to proceed quickly to an electoral process for selection of members of parliament, senators, and the president.
Well, CGTN's Abdulaziz Bilo joins us live from our newsroom here in Nairobi to give us more on that story. Abdulaziz, the UN is worried that the growing political tension in Somalia is threatening the country's progress. What is the situation like in Somalia following this stalemate? And is there any tension as the UN has warned?
Well, the United Nations Security Council did hold a security session on Somalia to address the tense political climate that has been ongoing in the Somali capital, Mogadishu, over the delayed elections. Now, the Security Council, as well as other top diplomats who attended that summit, are of the view that there should be no parallel or a unilateral or even a partial election should take place in Somalia. They want the Somali leadership to come together to strike a deal and end this stalemate. Now, there was a September 17, 2020 agreement that was reached between federal and regional leaders that stipulates that election should be held in time. That did not happen, and during that time, the mandate of the Somali Parliament, the Senate, including that mandate of the Somali President, did expire on 8th of February and 27th December 2020 respectively. So there's a clause in that agreement that stipulates current office holders will remain in place until new election takes place. So there's that conflict of interest now. The opposition is arguing that since the mandate of the president has expired, then there's a need for the formation of a transitional national council that can lead the election. That is the opposition's view. The government is adamant that that deal that was secured by both regional and federal leaders is law and that current office holders should remain in place. And the UN has been pushing regional leaders to abide by this agreement since it was endorsed by both houses of parliament. So the opposition wants the transitional council to actually take over from the Somali president, which is what the government is against. And the UN is trying to bring all these sides together, including the summit that has kicked off in Mogadishu a few days ago.
And Abdulaziz, what would it then take for the delayed elections to be held as soon as possible?
Concessions must be made. The opposition wants the Somali president to relinquish power completely, and they want him to be removed from all future election talks. They are arguing that the Somali president, Mohamed Abdullahi Farmajo, is the main obstacle towards the implementation of that September 17 electoral agreement. Now, some of the hot sticky issues that the leaders are failing to agree upon are just three. There's the issue of the composition of the Electoral Commission. The opposition says that it is comprised of members who are allied to the Somali president and they might tilt the election in his own favor. There's also the issue with the election of representatives from Somaliland, the breakaway region in northern Somalia. The Senate president wants to lead that task, and the deputy prime minister says that the composition must be mixed. They must both have power. And then there's also the issue of Jubaland, where federal forces have been deployed in the Gedo region. The regional president of Jubaland wants the forces pulled out, the region returned under his control, and then the election can take place there. So until those concessions are agreed upon, it's very unlikely that there will be any deal agreed between both the federal and regional leaders. The opposition, on the other hand, they don't want President Farmajo to take part in any election talks, and until both sides come to an agreement, I don't think there will be any likelihood to see a deal being struck very soon. Right now, as we're speaking, some regional leaders are in Mogadishu in the absence of the Jubaland and Puntland leaders. Until the two leaders come and an agreed election deal is struck, I think we are not going to see any kind of elections happening anytime soon.
All right, Abdulaziz, thank you very much for that update. CGTN's Abdulaziz Bilo joining us live from our newsroom here in Nairobi. Well, we shift our focus to Nigeria now, where kidnappers have released 53 people in Niger State. According to local officials, those freed include women and children abducted from a bus and schools in the area. It is still not clear if ransom was paid for their release. The state officials had earlier insisted that they would not pay any ransom. The freed bus abduction victims have undergone medical checkups before being reunited with their families. Abductions have increased in Niger State in recent years, posing a security challenge for locals. Well, for more on that story, CGTN's Phil E. Haza joins us from Abuja with more details. Phil, what is the latest on the efforts to rescue the more than 40 students kidnapped in Nigeria's Niger State?
Well, thank you, Mahia. What we know at the moment about that particular incident is the fact that the Niger State Secretary to the state government, that's Ahmed Matane, says that the government is in direct talks with the suspects, the abductors now, to try to secure their release. How that discussion is ongoing, where it is holding, is not clear at the moment, because of course the government will not want to release all of those details, but they've assured the populace and the citizenry that the students will be released anytime soon. It could happen today, it could happen tomorrow, but that time is not fixed. That also corresponds with the statement by the Minister of Information, Lai Mohammed, saying that the government will explore all kinetic and non-kinetic measures or approach to ensure the release of those kidnapped people, including the 27 children. But the government has said that negotiations, or rather ransom, will not be paid. That will not be part of the agreement or measures that the government will take to release the students.
And Phil, why are school children increasingly being kidnapped in Nigeria?
Well, thank you, Mahia. It's a bit worrying. It's actually an unfortunate trend that is beginning to occur in Nigeria, because if you look back at series of events that has occurred in the past few years, talking about Chibok and then Dapchi girls to the Kagara boys in Katsina, and then now the, I beg your pardon, the Kankara boys in Katsina, then Kagara in Niger State. It's a bit worrying, you know, the fact that if you look at also those schools, they're found in very remote areas in the states, ungoverned areas as well. The Niger State governor recently, when meeting with lawmakers, stated that the state, for example, in Niger State, is overstretched in terms of security apparatus, saying that previously the state used to have about 14,000 policemen, but at the moment it's just about 4,000, and they are overstretched. And so governing areas where these boarding facilities are situated, it's becoming a challenge, and they are now becoming soft targets, that's the school, to these abductors. Security experts are saying that this could possibly be a stretch of insurgency from the northeast, because we've seen kidnap of school children happen in the northeast now, the northwest, that's in Katsina State, and now the north central. So every part of the north has witnessed this dastardly act or attack by kidnappers, and the government will need to do more than just rescue the children, but ensure that they perpetrate these acts, they bring out or find some of these kidnappers and bring them to book as a form of deterrence to further attacks.
All right, Phil, thank you for that. CGTN's Philly Haza speaking to us from Abuja. Moving on, Guinea is expected to begin its Ebola vaccination drive on Tuesday. A flight carrying thousands of jabs was delayed by a Saharan dust storm. The West African country is trying to stamp out a resurgence of the deadly Ebola virus after an outbreak was declared last weekend. CGTN's Tuli Shabalala has more.
On the 14th of February, health officials in Guinea declared an Ebola outbreak. At least 5 Ebola cases were detected in the rural community of Nezero-Kor, a forest region just southeast of the capital Conakry. The country is now on a drive to curb the virus from further spread. A special flight carrying more than 11,000 doses of the Merck vaccine finally landed in Guinea late on Monday.
In the boxes are the Ebola vaccines, the Merck vaccine to be exact, which arrived this evening and which was supposed to come yesterday, but unfortunately due to bad weather, the plane couldn't land. It took the intervention of many people for this plane to be here tonight to bring these vaccines, which were so much awaited for and which will serve us to help and stop the spread of this Ebola outbreak, mainly in the forest region.
This is the first time the disease has been reported in the country since an outbreak ended in 2016. Guinea was one of the 3 most affected countries in the 2014-2016 Ebola outbreak in West Africa. The epidemic left more than 11,300 people dead, mainly in Guinea, Liberia, and Sierra Leone.
The vaccines will next be deployed on the ground in the theater of operations in Nzerekore and in all the sites where they will be needed to protect the contacts of the sick individuals and thus encircle the spread of this epidemic, which is of concern not only to Guinea but also to neighboring countries.
Ebola is transmitted through close contact with bodily fluids. The virus causes severe fever and, in the worst cases, causes unstoppable bleeding. It has recently re-emerged in the Democratic Republic of Congo.
This vaccine has already been used in several other epidemics, particularly in the DRC, where in recent years more than 300,000 doses of this vaccine have been used to contain at least 3 Ebola epidemics in central DRC, but also in North Kivu and Ituri, and this has prevented the spread of these epidemics to neighboring countries.
A further 8,700 vaccine doses are set to arrive from the United States on Wednesday. Thuli Shabalala, CGTN.
And further afield, China's foreign minister is calling for more talks and cooperation to promote human rights, describing them not as the exclusive rights of just a few countries. Wang Yi defended China at a high-level meeting of the United Nations Human Rights Council. CGTN's Wang Mengji has more.
In his speech, Wang proposed 4 initiatives to promote and protect human rights, embracing a people-centered philosophy, upholding the universality and particularity of human rights, advancing them systematically and promoting them via dialogue and cooperation.
Human rights are not a monopoly by a small number of countries, nor should they be used as a tool to pressure other countries and meddle in their internal affairs.
On the Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region, Wang said there has never been genocide, forced labor, or religious oppression there, and such inflammatory accusations are fabricated out of ignorance and prejudice. Wang reiterated that China welcomes the UN Human Rights Chief to visit the region.
The door to Xinjiang is always open. People from many countries who have visited Xinjiang have learned the facts and the truth on the ground. China also welcomes the High Commissioner for Human Rights to visit Xinjiang.
Wang also defended Beijing's policy in Hong Kong. He said there is public support for the national security law, which came into effect in June last year.
The legislation on safeguarding national security in Hong Kong has facilitated a major turnaround from turbulence to law and order in the region, and protected the lawful rights and freedoms that the residents of Hong Kong enjoy under the Basic Law.
Wang also said public health is a key part of human rights. As vaccines are related to people's right to health, Wang called for the equal distribution of COVID-19 vaccines around the world.
China is the first country to make a commitment to making its COVID-19 vaccines global public goods. Vaccines should be distributed fairly around the globe to ensure accessibility and affordability, especially in developing countries.
And it's just about time for us to check in on all the latest from the world of business. Here's what's coming up. Tanzania to increase 2021-2022 fiscal year spending by 4%. And Egypt's Sharm el-Sheikh moves to reduce its high dependency on tourism.
Every year, approximately 400 million tons of plastic is produced, and about 40% of that is single use.
79% of that is not recycled, it's not turned into energy, it's just going into landfill or into the environment in some way.
With the global focus on plastic pollution and my eldest son Tristan studying marine biology, I wanted to get involved and see for myself the true extent of the pollution in our region.
We're on our way!
Welcome back. Now, Tanzania is planning to raise its public spending for the fiscal year starting in July by 4% due to high debt servicing costs and a growing wage bill. The East African nation's debt has been growing in recent years. President John Magufuli's government has increased borrowing to spend on large infrastructure projects like railways and power plants. From Dar es Salaam, here is Isaac Lucando.
Tanzania plans to increase government spending from the current $15.1 billion to $15.7 billion in the next financial year. The government credits the country's recently attained lower middle income status to increased spending over the last 5 years.
There are things that have been implemented faster and at greater levels than they were for long periods previously. For example, you see this in the criteria used to get middle income status. This is individual incomes getting to an average of $1,036, reducing budget dependency and increasing spending on social services.
The increased budget will, among other things, be used to service government debt and cater to a growing wage bill. With only $11.2 billion coming from domestic sources, this economist believes expanding local sources is necessary.
We have very few taxpayers, so the tax base is very small, which means that few people are paying a lot of taxes to cover the rest. So it is the duty of the government to make sure that the tax base is widened for everybody to be able to pay tax smoothly.
According to the Ministry of Finance, out of the total budget, $9.9 billion will be recurrent expenditure, while $5.7 billion will be directed towards development projects.
The rise in Tanzania's 2021-2022 budget estimates comes at a time when the country begins implementing its new 5-year development plan. The plan seeks to eradicate abject poverty and transform the economy from an agricultural economy with low productivity to a semi-industrialized one.
Tanzania has been using a combination of local funds and borrowing to splurge on large infrastructure projects like railways and power plants. Experts believe the investment will be worthwhile.
In the very near future, we'll be saying goodbye to blackouts. We'll be saying goodbye to dilapidated roads. We'll be saying goodbye to a lot of stuff that are hindering business environment. So this is very fundamental for the economic growth.
COVID-19, among other things, forced the government to lower its economic projections for 2020 to 5.5% from the initial projection of 6.9%. This year, the World Bank has expressed cautious optimism that Tanzania's economy may grow by 5.5%. Isaac Lucando, CGTN, Dar es Salaam.
Now, Sharm el-Sheikh and the neighboring cities of Dahab and Nuweiba in Egypt's South Sinai region have for many years depended on tourism. But as CGTN's Yasser Hakim reports, officials have plans to help people tap into other revenue streams.
Although it significantly supports Egypt's economy, tourism has been highly susceptible to external events over the past decade. And those most affected during tough times are the people who live in cities that are tourist attractions. That's why the government has embarked on a plan to diversify the sources of revenue for the people of South Sinai. The first university to open a campus in South Sinai is Saudi's King Salman University, and a second one is about to be set up. The aim is to offer local students different career options.
No
one from this governorate would have dreamt that he will receive higher education in South Sinai. They all went to Suez and Ismailia cities or Cairo for education, causing instability and a lot of financial burden on their families.
In Sharm el-Sheikh, we offer studies that serve the city in tourism and hospitality, engineering, construction, arts, languages and high-tech sectors. We are also helping locals to establish and manage SMEs and startups, develop skills and produce handmade products.
Thousands of Egyptian and Arab students are expected to enroll in the universities, thus keeping the city busy throughout the year. Sharm el-Sheikh is also being transformed into an environmentally friendly city.
We are here at the commercial center. We have the second natural gas station, which will also have charging spots for electric vehicles. It will also offer services of transforming vehicle engines from petrol-based to natural gas or electricity-powered ones. It's all part of plans to make Sharm el-Sheikh a green city.
Nuweiba, a touristic town next to Sharm el-Sheikh, is expected to become a trade and investment region.
There is a port in Nairobi. Therefore, Nairobi is said to be a major commercial zone. We can benefit from being a link between the Western Arab Peninsula and Eastern Arab Peninsula.
Infrastructure such as houses, roads and bridges are under construction to ease the movement of goods, businesses and workers. These investments are expected to create job opportunities for the locals and a sustainable economy all year round, not just during the tourism season. Yasser Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
Stay with us here on Africa Live. We're taking another short break, but we'll be back with all the latest in sports.
How would you create